In today's episode, we delve into a harrowing narrative where love, secrecy, and identity converge with devastating consequences. This case involves a newlywed couple whose lives are irreversibly changed when a long-hidden truth comes to light, leading to a tragic and violent end. Kathy Collins, 29, was a cherished librarian at Morphew Elementary School in San Diego. Known for her warm demeanor and innovative approach to introducing students to inclusive literature, Kathy was a passionate advocate for representation, ensuring that every child could see themselves reflected in the stories they read. She was also transgender, a detail she had kept private even from her husband, Jason Collins. Kathy's decision to withhold this aspect of her identity stemmed from a desire to focus on the present, her life as a caring wife, dedicated educator, and community member. However, this secret would ultimately place an unbearable strain on her marriage. Jason Collins, 32, was a U.S. Marine stationed at Camp Pendleton. The two met in the fall of 2012 at a charity event for veterans in San Diego's Gaslamp Quarter. Their connection was immediate. Jason's composed nature complemented Kathy's vivacious charm, and their shared values of compassion and service solidified their bond. By early 2014, the couple had married in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Despite their seemingly idyllic life together, Kathy carried the heavy burden of her concealed past. She feared how Jason, a devoutly religious man from a conservative military background, might react to learning she was transgender. Kathy carefully avoided discussions about her childhood, redirecting conversations and focusing on their shared dreams for the future. Though she confided in a few close friends, including her former partner, Laura Martinez, Kathy struggled with the emotional toll of keeping her identity hidden from Jason. Her anxiety grew as she questioned whether their love could withstand the weight of her unspoken truth. In March 2014, Kathy appeared to be at the pinnacle of her happiness. She had settled into her role as a wife and educator and felt embraced by those around her. Yet, beneath the surface, she was acutely aware of the risks associated with her secrecy, risks that would culminate in an unspeakable tragedy. On the morning of March 25, 2014, Jason returned to their apartment on Fifth Avenue in San Diego's Hillcrest neighborhood. What awaited him would forever alter his life. Kathy's lifeless body was discovered in their bedroom, showing signs of strangulation amidst a scene of disarray. The room bore evidence of a violent struggle, torn sheets, an overturned lamp, and Kathy's cherished copy of The Tropic of Cancer discarded on the floor. Jason's frantic call to 911 described the shocking scene. First responders arrived swiftly, securing the area and preserving evidence. The police was struck by the brutality of the crime, a stark contrast to the quiet, respectful couple known to neighbors. Community members, many of whom recalled seeing Kathy and Jason together at local spots, expressed disbelief at the tragedy that had unfolded in their midst. As we unravel the details of this case, we confront the devastating consequences of secrecy and the societal stigmas that can fuel violence. Kathy's story is a sad reminder of the profound dangers faced by those navigating hidden truths in a world still grappling with acceptance. The initial reaction from the officers on the scene suggested they had rarely encountered such a brutal attack in this quiet residential area. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual the night before, describing the couple as calm and respectful. One neighbor mentioned that the couple kept to themselves, often seen together at local spots like Balboa Park or North Park's Thorn Street Brewery on weekends. But none of these details could account for the horrifying tragedy now confronting investigators. The serene quiet of the neighborhood had been shattered by the weight of violence, leaving residents grappling with the chilling realization that such a brutal act had occurred in their midst. As the investigation began in earnest, the once ordinary street was soon filled with the flashing lights of police cruisers, the hum of forensic teams, and murmurs of confusion and fear from onlookers. Neighbors, many of whom described Kathy and Jason as a quiet, respectful couple, struggled to reconcile the apparent normalcy of their lives with the gruesome events that had unfolded. Police were swift in their response, with veteran investigator Mark Evans taking the lead. Evans, a seasoned officer with a reputation for his methodical and unflinching approach, arrived at the scene ready to dissect every detail. Known among his peers for his ability to unravel even the most complex cases, he meticulously surveyed the apartment. Each corner of the room told a story. A disheveled lamp cord and scattered belongings painted a vivid picture of chaos. These signs of a violent struggle indicated that Kathy had fought fiercely before succumbing to her injuries. As Evans examined the crime scene, faint bloodstains on the bedsheets caught his attention. Though subtle, they suggested Kathy had resisted her attacker, an observation that added another layer of complexity to the case. The bruising around her neck, however, left little doubt about the cause of death: strangulation. It was a brutal, intimate act that indicated rage or desperation, rather than random violence. But as the team worked, an unexpected discovery raised troubling new questions. Upon closer examination of Kathy's body, investigators noticed scars around her chest and lower abdomen. These scars, symmetrical and precise, appeared surgical, yet their placement prompted initial speculation about their origin. Evans and his team considered the possibility of ritualistic elements, a rare but documented occurrence in violent crimes. The thought was unsettling. Such acts are often deeply symbolic and involve a calculated display of wounds meant to send a message. With this possibility in mind, officers documented the scars meticulously, photographing them from multiple angles for further analysis. Detective Sandra Lee, a forensic specialist known for her sharp observations and attention to detail, was called to the scene to offer her insights. Lee, who had seen her share of violent crimes, immediately noted the clean and deliberate nature of the scars. "These don't look like injuries from an attack," she remarked, pointing out their surgical precision. Her observations shifted the focus of the investigation, prompting Evans to consider another explanation. Could these marks be related to Kathy's medical history? He made a mental note to delve deeper into her past once the forensic evidence was secured. Meanwhile, officers worked to preserve the integrity of the crime scene, treating it as both a potential ritualistic killing and a deeply personal attack. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, was carefully cataloged, while investigators fanned out to gather information from the surrounding community. In the building's lobby, Jason Collins, Kathy's husband, sat in stunned silence as detectives began their initial interview. His demeanor was detached, his voice flat as he recounted the events of the previous evening. According to Jason, he and Kathy had spent a quiet night at home before he left for a morning jog, only to return to a nightmare. His answers, while coherent, lacked the emotional weight officers often observe in grieving spouses. Detective Evans made a mental note of Jason's subdued tone, wondering if it was a shock or something else entirely. As the day unfolded, the investigation took an unexpected turn. Kathy's medical records, obtained as part of standard procedure, revealed the source of the scars and introduced a pivotal detail about her identity. The marks were the result of gender-affirming surgeries Kathy had undergone years before her marriage to Jason. This discovery was not just a clue, it was a revelation that reframed the entire case. Kathy was a transgender woman, a fact she had chosen to keep private, even from her husband. This newfound understanding shifted the investigation dramatically. What had initially appeared to be a potential ritualistic crime now pointed to something far more personal and complex. Investigators began to piece together the implications of this secret and how its revelation might have impacted those closest to Kathy. Jason's conservative worldview frequently clashed with Kathy's progressive ideals. Yet they managed to forge a bond based on what appeared to be mutual respect, or so it seemed on the surface. As detectives delved deeper into their relationship, Jason described his wife as passionate and outgoing, particularly when it came to her work as an elementary school librarian. He highlighted Kathy's fervent commitment to introducing LGBT-themed literature into her school's curriculum, which included some sexually explicit materials. This aspect of her advocacy had made her both admired and controversial among her colleagues and students, though it also sparked frequent backlash from conservative parents and members of the community who raised concerns over the content she was bringing into the classroom. Kathy's efforts to expose young minds to diverse narratives were often hailed as groundbreaking, and many praised her courage in bringing these important conversations to the forefront. However, for Jason, the inclusion of such explicit material in the school's library was a point of contention. He confided in Kathy that he didn't entirely agree with her approach, particularly in an elementary school environment. These disagreements, while not uncommon in their relationship, created an underlying tension that Jason tried to ignore, focusing instead on the moments they shared and the bond they had built. Despite this, the philosophical divide between them lingered, occasionally surfacing during heated discussions. As investigators pressed Jason for more details, they began to explore his discomfort with Kathy's unwavering dedication to promoting LGBT rights. Eventually, Jason acknowledged that he had felt increasingly uneasy with Kathy's work, though he had always dismissed these feelings as differences of opinion. He had never fully processed how much their views diverged until this point. The detectives began to suspect that this ideological conflict could have played a significant role in the events leading up to Kathy's death, particularly when they learned more about her hidden past. The turning point in their questioning came when officers revealed Kathy's history as a man, including the fact that she had undergone a gender transition. Jason's reaction was immediate and intense. His face drained of color, and he vehemently denied any prior knowledge of Eva's gender identity, claiming that had he known, he would have divorced her. His voice, laced with disbelief and anger, resonated with the investigators. He continued, insisting that trust had been paramount in their marriage, particularly given his military background, where integrity and honesty were core values. Jason's response painted a picture of a man who felt utterly blindsided, believing that their entire relationship had been built on deception. His shock was palpable, as if he was trying to reconcile this new revelation with the years he had spent with Ava. Detectives carefully documented his statements, noting the deep emotional impact this news had on him. His insistence on not knowing about Kathy's gender transition, combined with his conservative beliefs, seemed to offer a potential motives, one that investigators began to scrutinize more closely. They began to see a picture of a man who felt betrayed by his wife's hidden identity, someone whose discomfort with her LGBTQ advocacy could have festered into something more harmful. Jason's refusal to accept the truth of Kathy's past, coupled with his emotionally charged reactions, raised new questions for the detectives. His conservative views, intertwined with feelings of betrayal and anger, now appeared to be pivotal elements in understanding the tragic turn their investigation had taken. As the investigation unfolded, it was becoming clearer that Jason's emotional turmoil and deeply held beliefs would be central to uncovering the full truth behind the death of Kathy's death. The second suspect in the case was Laura Martinez, a 27-year-old social worker who had built a career advocating for transgender youth and fostering understanding in a world often filled with judgment and prejudice. Laura was known for her unwavering commitment to her clients, often going above and beyond to create safe spaces for young people navigating the challenges of gender identity. However, her connection to Kathy went far deeper than her professional work. Laura and Kathy shared a bond that extended beyond friendship, a romantic and sexual relationship that had once been a significant part of their lives. Their history was marked by mutual respect, emotional intimacy, and a rare level of understanding, particularly as Laura was one of the few people Kathy trusted enough to share the full story of her transition. Even after their romantic relationship ended, Laura remained a central figure in Kathy's life. She was someone Kathy could turn to for advice, comfort, and an empathetic ear when faced with the challenges of keeping her past private. However, when Kathy married Jason, the dynamics of her relationship with Laura became more complicated. Laura's feelings for Kathy didn't disappear, and her deep involvement in Kathy's personal life continued to blur the boundaries between support and personal desire. This became even more pronounced when Laura revealed to detectives during questioning that she had engaged in a sexual relationship with Jason several months after he and Kathy were married. Laura's affair with Jason was not just a secret, it was an active force that shaped her interactions with both Kathy and Jason. When questioned by detectives, she candidly explained that she had suggested the idea of an open marriage to the couple. She framed her proposal as a modern, progressive approach to resolving the tensions she perceived between Kathy and Jason. According to Laura, an open relationship would allow the couple to explore their individual needs without feeling confined by traditional marital expectations. She believed, or at least claimed to believe, that such an arrangement would provide the flexibility needed to address their differences and strengthen their bond. However, detectives quickly began to question Laura's motives. While she maintained that her intentions were purely altruistic, evidence suggested otherwise. Laura admitted that she hoped to rekindle her romantic and sexual relationship with Kathy, while simultaneously continuing her affair with Jason. This revelation cast doubt on her sincerity and raised concerns about whether her actions were truly in the best interest of the couple or merely a way to serve her desires. Her unapologetic demeanor during the interrogation, coupled with her frank discussions of her personal preferences, led investigators to suspect that Laura's involvement might have exacerbated the tensions in Kathy and Jason's marriage. Laura's methods of persuasion were carefully calculated. She described how she would approach Kathy with casual, philosophical conversations about the nature of modern relationships, framing her suggestion as a way to reduce the stress in their marriage. With Jason, she took a more direct route, emphasizing how an open marriage could alleviate his frustrations and allow him to explore new dynamics that might align better with his values. She even positioned herself as a neutral party who simply wanted to help the couple find happiness. In reality, her actions seemed to be a calculated attempt to normalize her own continued involvement in both their lives. Detectives noted that Laura's actions likely added strain to an already fragile marriage. Her affair with Jason created an emotional wedge between him and Kathy, while her discussions with Kathy about an open marriage may have planted seeds of doubt and insecurity. It became clear to investigators that Laura's presence in their lives was far from neutral. Instead, it seemed to amplify the underlying tensions between Kathy and Jason. When pressed on her intentions, Laura vehemently denied any manipulative behavior. She insisted that her goal was to help Kathy and Jason navigate their differences in a way that would ultimately bring them closer together. Yet her candid admissions about her desires, coupled with the intricate web of relationships she had woven, painted a far more self-serving picture. Detectives could not ignore the possibility that Laura's actions, whether intentional or not, had played a significant role in destabilizing Eva and Jason's marriage. As the investigation continued, detectives examined whether Laura's involvement might have indirectly contributed to the events leading up to Kathy's death. Her affair with Jason, her deep knowledge of Kathy's personal history, and her persistent efforts to shape the couple's relationship dynamic all pointed to a complex and potentially volatile situation. While there was no direct evidence linking Laura to the murder itself, her role in the unfolding tragedy became a critical piece of the puzzle. Detectives were left to untangle the intricate threads of trust, betrayal, and unspoken desires that now seemed to define the relationships at the heart of this case. As detectives continued their search for answers, they turned their attention to Paul Reed, Jason's close friend and confidant. Paul, 34, was a longtime political organizer for the Republican Party and known among his colleagues as a dedicated campaigner with deeply conservative views. Like Jason, he often expressed disapproval of Kathy's advocacy for LGBT issues, and he even voiced concerns to Jason about Kathy's influence on local youth through her work as a librarian, pushing sexually explicit books. Yet, as police dug deeper into Paul's life, a startling truth emerged that contradicted his public image. Paul's hidden double life slowly began to unravel under the relentless scrutiny of investigators, revealing a series of secrets that painted a stark contrast to his carefully cultivated public persona. Outwardly, Paul had long projected the image of a dedicated political organizer, staunchly conservative in his views, and disapproving of the progressive stances taken by those like his brother Jason and Jason's wife Kathy. Yet behind closed doors, Paul was secretly involved in numerous sexual encounters with men, a side of himself he had gone to great lengths to conceal. The first signs of his deception emerged when investigators began to examine his financial records. Detectives uncovered significant debts to male escorts in the San Diego area, with payments that spanned over a year, amounts that were suspicious enough to raise suspicions. These financial transactions revealed more than just a hidden sexual identity. They pointed to a man who had been living a life filled with contradictions and secrecy, hiding a crucial part of himself that he had kept from almost everyone in his life. Paul had been juggling the weight of mounting financial pressure caused by his indulgences, all while maintaining a facade of moral righteousness in his political and personal views. These debts, combined with his tightly controlled public image, suggested that Paul was living in constant conflict, trapped between his desires and the persona he had constructed to fit into his conservative world. As detectives dug deeper into Paul's life, the contradictions became more evident. His public persona as a hardline conservative, deeply critical of Kathy's advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights, now appeared to be a mask to protect him from facing his internal battles. The detectives began to piece together how these internal conflicts might have affected his relationships, particularly his complex dynamic with Jason. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Paul's rigid conservatism may have been partially motivated by a need to suppress his secret life. His private desires, coupled with financial strain from his secretive liaisons, could have built a dangerous tension within his friendship with Jason. This tension was not merely financial. In an interrogation that would become a pivotal moment in the case, Paul reluctantly confessed to an unsettling incident that shed light on the depth of his obsession with Jason. One night, after a social gathering, Paul admitted to drugging Jason's drink, ensuring he would fall into a deep sleep. With Jason unconscious, Paul, who had harbored feelings for him for years, used this opportunity to cross an unforgivable line, engaging in sexual acts with his friend while he was unaware. This confession shocked the detectives, adding yet another layer of betrayal to a case already thick with deception, jealousy, and hidden motives. The admission not only revealed Paul's hidden desires, but also made it clear that his attachment to Jason had been unhealthy and manipulative, something far beyond mere friendship. In the wake of this revelation, investigators began to focus more closely on Paul's relationship with Jason and Kathy. It became increasingly apparent that Paul's jealousy of Kathy may have been a driving force behind his actions. For years, Paul had watched as Jason's relationship with Kathy deepened, feeling as though he was losing his place in his brother's life to someone he could not accept. Kathy's position in Jason's life, her work advocating for LGBTQ+ rights, and her identity as a transgender woman, things Paul had long found difficult to reconcile with his own beliefs, likely fueled a simmering resentment. In his mind, Kathy was an obstacle, one who had taken the place of someone he wished he could be. This jealousy, combined with his deeply buried desires, likely set off a chain of events that played a part in pushing Jason to violence. Detectives began to wonder if Paul's influence had contributed to the growing tension in Jason and Kathy's marriage. Was it possible that Paul's disapproval of Kathy's identity and his covert feelings for Jason had indirectly contributed to the explosion of anger that culminated in Kathy's death? Investigators began considering whether Paul's toxic influence could have suddenly pushed Jason to confront Kathy on the night of her death, exacerbating feelings of betrayal and confusion. The fact that Paul had never openly accepted Kathy, never truly embraced her as part of Jason's life, meant that his feelings toward her were always laced with resentment. Despite all the evidence against him, Paul was not immediately arrested, though detectives grew increasingly suspicious of his role in the complex web surrounding Kathy's murder. As they uncovered more about his hidden debts, his covert sexual activities, and his obsessive feelings for Jason, the picture of Paul's life as one of deep contradictions became undeniable. And Jason's relationship with Ava, his wife of only a few months, unraveled when he discovered she was a transgender woman. He was angry about the secrecy of Kathy. He argued, "Why do you have to do this? Do you know how this makes me feel?" Kathy said she was sorry and was going to tell him in the future. This revelation clashed with Jason's conservative upbringing and rigid military values, leaving him feeling deeply betrayed. He believed Kathy had hidden an essential truth about herself, which fueled his growing resentment. On the night of the tragedy, their argument escalated into a heated confrontation in their San Diego apartment. Overcome by rage and a sense of deception, Jason strangled Kathy in a fit of uncontrolled anger, leaving her lifeless on the floor. Panicking, Jason attempted to cover his tracks by staging the scene to resemble a domestic dispute gone wrong. Despite his efforts, detectives quickly found inconsistencies in his account, noting that there were no signs of forced entry and that neighbors had reported hearing raised voices that night. Kathy's autopsy revealed clear evidence of strangulation, aligning with the profile of someone with Jason's strength and proximity to the victim. Under mounting scrutiny, Jason's shifting story further raised suspicions. On a quiet afternoon, the detectives arrived at the Collins home. Jason was at home, relaxing, when he heard a knock on the door. He opened it as the detectives knew they were closing up on the case. Once they were in, they provided Jason with the evidence, read him his rights, and arrested him. Jason was charged with second-degree murder. At trial, his defense argued that his actions were a reaction to societal transphobia and feelings of betrayal, presenting psychologists who testified about the pressures Jason might have faced. The prosecution, however, painted a picture of premeditated violence, pointing to his attempt to stage the crime scene and inconsistencies in his statements. They argued the crime stemmed from Jason's personal prejudice and inability to accept Ava's identity. In January 2016, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Jason guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of justice to Kathy's loved ones, but sparked broader discussions about transphobia and accountability. Jason's stoic demeanor throughout the trial and his refusal to accept full responsibility left lingering unease among those following the case, while Kathy's friends and family worked to honor her memory and advocate for greater understanding and inclusivity. Stay glued to this channel and share your thoughts in the comment section. Until next time, when we bring you more crime stories, stay safe. Thank you.